What's going on, Geminites? It's your boy Gem Mint. Today we're going to count down the top 10 comic book movies of all time. So who better to invite to co-host this with me than Michael Roman from Everything Always. What's going on, man?
What's going on, Gem? How's it going, man?
Everything's good. Thank you for jumping on here with me. This is a list that was comprised of a poll that I put up in our Facebook group, Geminites. So if you don't agree with the list, you need to come over to Facebook and join the group so you can participate in these polls. What do you think, Mike? You ready to count this list down?
Yeah, let's do it, man.
All right, so number 10 on the list is Marvel's The Avengers. Avengers number 1.
I think that's an easy pick, obviously, because of, how we all feel about it, and a lot of people haven't been there in the theater when it got released and being able to see it with the lead-up films.
Yeah, for me, that would have been higher on the list. I think this is one of my top, maybe top 3. And you're right, if you live through the whole, Iron Man, Hulk, Thor, everything coming together and leading up to it, it had an even bigger impact. Still one of my favorite movies to this day.
Yeah, and a lot of superhero movies always try to pull the team together in that first movie, and this was really one of those that had finally let the other heroes get their own solo movies before we saw it. Mattered a lot.
Yeah, they really did it right with establishing those franchises individually, and that's like the blueprint now. All right, number 9 on the list. Man, this one is a little controversial. This is X-Men Days of Future Past.
Yeah, I guess there has to be an X-Men one on there, but it's one of those ones where you look back at all the movies that have been made and be like, is this really one that should make the top 10?
Yeah, I don't know about top 10. You're right, though. It's nice to see some X-Men love on here. It is my personal favorite X-Men one out of all of them. I know some people will say First Class. I wasn't really a big First Class guy, and this was supposed to really kind of reset everything with X-Men. You remember, the timeline was all messed up, just like in the comics.
Yeah, I feel you, and I think really looking back on it, the only disdain I have left was they weren't able to pull it out when they tried to redo it. It was like, okay, you took one crack at it, it didn't work, y'all tried to reboot it and went at it, and it really didn't work again. Right,
I have faith in Feige. I think the MCU is really going to get the X-Men right, but yeah, like you said, it didn't really work with the Fox franchise. Number 8 on the list is Iron Man number 1.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense, and I think for a lot of us is a fan favorite. It holds up if you've watched it recently.
Yeah. So for me, this is kind of like Avengers. This one's higher up on my personal list. Robert Downey Jr., born to play this character. It was kind of like, this is going to make or break what we're going to do in the future. It set up this franchise that has gone, 23 movies now?
Yeah, and what's crazy is that when you do watch it in retrospect, I remember thinking this the last couple of times, there's maybe some jokes or some color in there that wouldn't have quite worked in today's atmosphere, and it was kind of awesome for them to be able to capture a little bit of the male chauvinism that has earmarked Tony Stark's character before maybe that wouldn't have been in play.
Yeah, that's a good point, because this was over 10 years ago, and we're definitely in a different climate these days, but it does fit Tony Stark's character so well.
Yeah, at least he wasn't a raging alcoholic.
Yeah, right? Well, that was Iron Man 2.
Touche.
All right, number 7 on the list, we have Avengers Endgame. Wow, so we have an Endgame over Marvel's The Avengers? I don't know about this one.
Yeah, it's a tough call. I think for what it is, being that sort of movie, never having seen it before really in a cinematic event like that, it makes sense to have it on the list somewhere. But, I agree with people when they say it's maybe not one of the better Marvel movies. It had a place in the MCU, and it had to do what it had to do, wrapping them all up, and I think it served that purpose first and foremost. So if it maybe wasn't everybody's favorite film, I think that's okay.
Yeah, I hear you. I really liked the third act. I liked having all those characters. That final battle was epic, but the time travel thing and I don't know, it was kind of weird in the beginning of that movie, right?
Bro, that's the thing though, right? It's all about that third act. And looking back on that, when we rewatched the movie, how many people, be honest with me, how many people of y'all boot that up on Marvel Disney Plus and then just skip right to the third act? I know I definitely do sometimes. It's not that I don't like the rest of the movie, but what are we watching this for? So
it's all about the third act for sure, man. All right, number 6 on the list. Wow, this was one that I was so happy to see on here. I think I put it up in my top 3 as well, man. This is Spider-Man 2, the Sam Raimi, Tobey Maguire, Spider-Man vs. Doc Ock classic movie.
Yeah, and I look back on that movie with really fond memories. I'm going to age myself a little bit here. I'm pretty sure I was in high school when that came out, and thinking about, we had never really seen superheroes done right. The CGI just wasn't quite there, and this was right on the precipice of that. And looking back at the Doc Ock battle on the top of the building, that's everything you wanted from a Spider-Man movie, right?
Yeah, exactly. Doc Ock on the buildings is straight out of the comics. The train scene was amazing. I love the atmosphere of like the brown buildings. It just felt so New York, so comic book accurate. And you're right, before that, superhero movies were goofy, like Batman Forever or Batman and Robin, which I liked as a kid. But this was a serious, real comic book movie, and it was like the first of its kind. All right, number 5 on the list, we're sticking with Spider-Man, and I'm kind of surprised this one made it and this high up. But Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, what do you think about this one?
Bro, there's a clip, and I wish I could better remember what the clip exactly is, but there's a reporter talking to Kevin Feige, and this is a recent clip. I'm sure you guys are going to be able to source it in the comments, please do, where Kevin Feige actually asks the reporter what his favorite Spider-Man movie is, and the reporter has no problem telling him Into the Spider-Verse. Oh, I remember what it was. He said that Spider-Man Far From Home was his second favorite Spider-Man movie, and Feige said, what's the first? And he goes, Into the Spider-Verse. I mean, it's undeniable. It is a really good movie.
It's a good movie, but man, I don't know if I could say that I like that better than the live action movies, and they did my boy Kingpin so dirty. What was that big lurch hunchback they had him design like?
All right, touche. All right.
No, but I get it for what it is. It definitely was a trend center in its genre, and it's going to set up future animated movies to be on the big screen.
Yeah, and I think that at the end of the day, it's never going to be the same. You've got live action, you've got animated, but it is nice to see animated taking a step forward and offering something different, which is cool.
All right, number 4 on the list. So we mentioned that, it was nice to see an X-Men movie on here. But number 4 on the list is Logan.
Is it just because it's rated R? Maybe.
I don't know, but I mean, Logan, I think I saw it one time. I liked the movie. It wasn't Old Man Logan. I guess it meant a lot for Hugh Jackman's final Wolverine movie. Well, at the time, he always says it's his final movie, right? Until he gets offered something in the MCU. We'll have to see. But, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I would say that it's even my favorite Wolverine movie.
Yeah, okay, and I could definitely see that. I think, again, maybe for the same reason that Endgame made the list. And, it's hard to tell. This is your community voting on this. But when I've looked at this list a couple of times before we've done the video and really thought about it, yeah, I can get it. It's a final piece for Wolverine's role, right? Not the X-Men screw-up, but for Wolverine. And considering he's been like one of the most iconic up till now, I think it makes sense.
Yeah, and they really separated it from the X-Men movies. It was its own thing for sure, and it was a farewell to a character and an actor that had been doing it for 10 or 11 movies or something?
A long time, almost as long as Robert Downey Jr., right? I think he's only got him beat by a year. Hey, if we're wrong about that, they're going to correct us in the comments, so.
Number 3 on the list, I'm totally with this. I love this movie, Avengers Infinity War.
Yeah, I mean, that's an obvious choice. And even though Mark Ruffalo spoiled that half of them were going to die, I think we were all just as shocked to see it when it happened.
I was shocked on who died. I thought they would have killed off throwaway characters. But when I was in that movie theater and they started killing off Spider-Man, Black Panther, people that had sequels, I was like, whoa, what are you doing?
And it really makes sense, though, too, that this would be so high, because it is that turning the corner in a Marvel Cinematic Universe, right? Like, they kept making X-Men movies, and yeah, we had the Dark Phoenix saga twice, but it wasn't really that culmination to something awesome the way we were going into an Infinity War movie. And I mean, Gem, I don't know about you, but if 10 years ago they had said this is what was going to happen, I definitely would not have believed them.
Definitely wouldn't believe it, and I loved how they did the Thanos snap and how that was just straight out of the comic books. I mean, it just made me believe in Feige so much more as a true fan and somebody that was going to stick to the source material.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, number 2 on the list, I think a lot of people are going to expect this. It's Captain America, the Winter Soldier.
Yeah, and I think a big part of that, and it is one of my favorites as well, I'm glad to hear it made it second on the list. I think a big deal has to do with how many practical shots they did, and I don't know if you know this about the film or not, but the Russos required that any shot that could be done in that film that didn't need to be CGI wasn't, and I think that's why it really holds up and will continue to hold up against these CGI movies in the future.
And it was also the Russo brothers, it was also Marvel showing that we can do a different type of genre within this comic book movie realm. And they did this spy thriller that really worked, and it was so different from Captain America, the First Avenger.
And really serious in a way and a tone that the Marvel movies weren't before it, and it was awesome. I think we were all very ready for it after Avengers 1, for sure.
Yeah, man. Now, wow, I'm just thinking about this. These were all Marvel movies so far.
Right? Crazy.
At least they weren't all MCU movies. We had some Fox stuff, some Sony stuff, but no DC movies, no kind of indie movies. And we know that there's movies out there like 300 or Scott Pilgrim or even like Watchmen. But, this was a community vote. Like I said, if you guys disagree with this list, come on over to the Geminites Facebook group, request to join. There are 3 questions that you must answer to be considered, and we could participate in these polls. All right, number 1 on the list is the Christopher Nolan, Christian Bale, Heath Ledger, The Dark Knight. I can get with that. I can definitely see why the majority of this group voted The Dark Knight as the number 1 comic book movie of all time. It was an awesome movie from start to finish, and you have Heath Ledger with an incredible performance as the Joker.
Right, and that whole trilogy, really specifically that movie, set the new benchmark for realism in Superman movies. And you have to, superhero movies, and you have to think, do we get the MCU we have if we don't get The Dark Knight first? And I mean, we could have that conversation all day, but I think this movie deserved a place on the list. And as we got higher, I was starting to see it was going to be number 1, no doubt.
Yeah, I totally agree. Do we get movies like The Winter Soldier? Do we get Deadpool with an R rating without having that serious tone? Now, I do think they kind of shot themselves in the foot with trying to do their whole DCEU like that, and you can see that with Justice League, and it didn't do so well. Even Man of Steel wasn't really critically acclaimed, although I liked it as a fan. But yeah, it definitely set the tone and changed the game for comic book movies.
That is a really good point. Would they have gone with Snyder in the first place to do the DCEU if The Dark Knight and that trilogy hadn't have been so dark? And we could talk about that forever. My personal feeling being they should have just gone with Snyder and embraced it and let him do the movies he was going to make and live with that. But really, that movie is super special, and at the time, there was nothing like it. Like, nothing like The Dark Knight before we saw it. So it makes sense. I'm with it.
And after all these years and all these movies, people are still voting it their number 1, at least in our group.
Yeah, no doubt. It makes sense for sure. I mean, we'll see what happens, 10 or 20 years down the road as the age group on these things start to get a little bit older, if they'll remember it as fondly, but at least for now.
Hey, Michael, let me know, are there any movies that didn't make this list that you would have placed on there?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very surprised to see that Guardians of the Galaxy didn't make the list, specifically the first one.
Another game changer movie. This showed that you can pluck any kind of IP, unknown characters we've never seen or heard of, and make a household name out of them. And it was funny. They set the tone for music in comic book movies, and I totally agree. It's one of my favorites too.
Really, if you look at it, it's making the right selection in the director to bring an entire personality to the franchise. That's why they were able to resurrect Thor. And I mean, who would have guessed that out of all the Avengers, Thor would be getting the first 4th movie? But with Taika Waititi being such a great director coming to the films, and I think that's what you're going to see on this list time and time again, is that the great films had great directors who just knew what they wanted to do with them and really hit the mark. And it resonates with the audience. And that's how you get some of these, like Logan hitting the top 10, because the director had an idea with the film and really hit it. So I can get with that, no doubt. But still, should have had Guardians on the list. How about you, man?
I'm a little surprised that the 1989 Batman wasn't on the list, or any of the Christopher Reeve Superman movies.
Yeah, and that makes sense, and that's why I had just brought up the fact we'll see as they age if people will keep The Dark Knight on the list. Those Reeves Superman movies are amazing, and again, the 1989, that's Tim Burton who directed that, right? The original Batman series. Those are benchmarks, but I just wonder how much of the audience now can remember those films.
That's true. Let us know what movies you would have added to the list in the comments below. I want to thank you guys for watching, and I want to thank my co-host, Michael Roman from Everything Always, so much for joining the show with me.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It was a pleasure. We'll do this again real soon.
Yeah, make sure to check out Everything Always. He always has the most up-to-date MCU news and other comic book movie news as well. If you guys enjoyed this video, consider hitting that subscribe on the gem to the left. If you like these top 10 type of videos, hit the playlist on the right. Stay minty fresh. Peace.